Hi, Quench crew. If you've ever dreamed of packing up everything, getting rid of everything, retiring, and traveling the world, then this is the video for you. Hi, I'm Lynn,
Hi, I'm Jace.
and welcome to our channel, Gen X
GenX
Quench, where we talk about all things related to this stage of life. If you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond, this pre-retirement, retirement life of going after your dreams and quenching that thirst for a better, bigger, and bolder life. And that is what we're going to be talking about today. So stay tuned. As we go along, like this video, share this video, and don't forget to subscribe so that you never miss one of our Gen X Quench videos. And so for today, as you've noticed, we have a beautiful special guest, one of my dearest friends who, in fact, I've never met in person. But we have been friends for over 3 years. Her name is Linda Griffin, and we met during a virtual entrepreneurship class. Linda is a life coach, and she'll get into it. And I was starting on my coaching business, and we were probably paired with hundreds of people. And they broke us into small groups, like accountability partners. And I think we started with what, 7 or 8 maybe in the small group. And then the small group got even smaller.
That, yeah.
And the small group got
Yeah.
smaller. And it ended up being just us two. And after the program ended, we said, let's still keep up with accountability. And it has been 3.5 years. And we meet weekly, bi-weekly, monthly. We adjust with the phases of the moon and what's going on in our lives. And I have had a front row seat to someone who said they were going to retire and wanted to travel the world. And dang it, that's what she's doing. So,
Very good. I'm psyched.
so for that, we're going to jump into this question about, chasing your dreams, downsizing. If you are a pet parent, please stay tuned because Linda had a dog that if you're trying to travel the world, what do you do? If you have almost adult children and adult children, what does the family have to say? We're going to dig into all of that. So Linda, I'm turning it over to you. Can you start by sharing a little bit about yourself, how you got to be a journey as a coach, as a mom, and what even led you to have this dream to have a travel lifestyle?
Wow. Thank you, Lynn and Jace. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share with your Gen X Quench community. I am excited to be with you today, joining you in Casa Zuniga in beautiful Guanajuato, Mexico. And as you said, I am a mom. I am a transformation coach, but I am also a woman in midlife and a woman that decided that it's not too late to start living life differently. So after 27 years of leadership within the federal government, and after surviving a cancer diagnosis and divorce and raising 2 young adult sons and starting my business, Garner Coaching, where I help individuals as well as organizations transition and also with growth, it was just the right time. There was no better time than to step fully into this new chapter of life, which I did this year in 2025 as a single female solo traveler, traveling and living abroad, and doing so with my business, being able to run my business from anywhere in the world. It's been a rich experience.
Wow.
When did it pop into your head in terms of, hey, wanting to travel, wanting to downsize, leave the USA? When did that first pop into your head?
You know, it started off as a whisper, Jace.
Okay.
It was just that little still small voice, they say, in the back of your head. And I knew that I wanted to do something differently. I was like, after I retired, and I retired relatively young at age 49, I was like, there's more to life. There's more for me. I want to do something differently. You know, I've checked the boxes with my career. I've raised my children. They have since moved out of the home. They're on their own. This is a perfect time. So that whisper in 2022, I just held on to that. There was a tug in my heart. And by 2023, I started to take action. And I started small, and I started decluttering room by room. And I spent a lot of time in my office. So I remember the day so clearly where I was sitting there and I was working, just, starting to really build my coaching business. I was looking around the office and I'm like, this is a lot of stuff. I'm looking at all the memorabilia from work and things from my children. And I just got up and I started to declutter right there in that room. And I labeled things in 5 different categories. I really didn't have like this check list at first. I just got up and started moving. I was like, I want to have a category of things that I keep, things that I store, things that I sell, that I donate, and things that I just throw in the trash. And that's how I started the process. And the things that I keep, those are the things that are going with me from place to place. So I knew I had to be really selective about what I kept. If it couldn't fit in like 2 suitcases in a backpack, I didn't take it. I had to just pare it down. And that's what I did. And things that I stored were mainly, sentimental things that you can't go in a store and just buy. They're things that my children made for me over the years. And even with those things, I had to pare it down. And the things that I donated to my favorite charities, those were things that that didn't sell. I did 2 garage sales. I just didn't have the capacity to do more than that. And I listed things on Facebook Marketplace and also on that neighborhood app called Nextdoor. And I was able to really pare my stuff down quickly. And I did well with selling the larger items that way. So that's initially how I started, was just putting things in those 5 categories, going from room to room, sorting and purging. And I left the garage for last. I mean, it was so much stuff in there that I had amassed for 20 plus years. So that was the last and the biggest task for me.
And just to let our viewers know, you were living in Dallas, and Dallas is home base, and you were in a home that you had been living in. So this was, not just not necessarily a huge place, but not a small place, multiple bedrooms and a home that you had lived in, that you started this downsizing. And even though you just spoke about it in a minute or 2 minutes, how long did that process take from when you said, okay, let me start with this office, as far as downsizing of the home, to getting to a place where, at what point was it you were ready to move from the time that you started?
Weeks, months? How long did it take?
Oh my gosh, months, months. It felt like a complete year before I got rid of completely everything, where I felt nimble and light and ready to flex, but for those that may be homeowners that want to do this type of lifestyle, I just want to say, I owned a home that I sold after my divorce. And this house that I was living in was 3 bedrooms, and it was a lease home. So I didn't have to worry about putting it on the market, but I did have to get moved out of it and have it cleaned up and hand the keys back to the landlord. So when I got that whisper in 2022, I started taking action in 2023. I actually wrapped up with selling and donating things probably like May of 2023. And that's when I turned the keys over. And that's when the in-between living started. And I moved in with a girlfriend at that point, and I was renting a room from her. I had my own bedroom and my own bathroom, and I stayed with her for a few months. And after staying with her, I had a conversation with my cousins, and they were like, much older than me. They were retired and they did their own share of travel. And they were like, why don't you come stay with us, save that money, and you could have the man cave, because my cousin had a man cave in the backyard, and it was fully equipped for living. The only thing is it didn't have running water inside.
Oh.
So I would have to come into the main home for, you know, showers and that type of thing. But once I moved in with my cousins, things changed and I wasn't able to move into the man cave and I was confined to the couch in the den in wide open space. You know, it's like open the door. It was an open floor plan. Hello, voila, here's Linda. I had to kind of move in and carve out space for myself. There wasn't like this designated space prepared for me. So I say that to say that transition isn't glamorous, and I would be the last person to glamorize it. I
Yep.
want to be real that it can be messy, but I reframed my thoughts around the whole process that I am making room for my dreams. I am making room for something new. And part of traveling and going from country to country, place to place, is that you have to be flexible. You have to be nimble, right? So I felt like this in-between living really was preparing me, and I was building that resilience that I needed for what was to come, right? So that's pretty much how things flowed once I pared everything down and moved in with a friend and then on to living with the cousins.
Well, what was I think if you can share the reason why that once you finished and you moved out of the house, why didn't you hit the road, hit the skies, and hit the other country then? Because I think I want to, dispel the myth that some people are like, okay, pack up, lock the door, empty house, and I'm off. And Linda is actually, you're really right now in a slow travel kind of mode. So you're not necessarily trying to just live out of a suitcase and just go country to country to country. You still, and we'll get to that, you still are looking at America as being the home base. But I think just for people that may not realize the hidden cost or the relationships, that this is a process for some people, and that, it took you a significant amount of time to get to this place. And when, you moved out of the house, the lease house, because your lease was up and you timed it that way. But why were you ready to go? Were you ready to leave the country at that
You
point?
know, I was not, Lynn. I was not ready to leave the country. I still had loose ends that I wanted to tie up, right? And I'm just that kind of person, somewhat of a control freak. And I'm like, no, this is one thing I want to really impart to your community, is that you may look at someone else's journey. That's their journey. You have to really focus on your journey and do things at your pace. And my goal was, this is my journey, this is my pace. And as I go through this process, I want to keep as much peace as I possibly can, because peace is absolutely priceless. And I just really felt like I wanted to be a slow traveler, not a digital nomad, a jet setter. I'm a slow traveler. I want to spend time in a place to really integrate somewhat before moving on to another location. And to just back up a little bit for your community that may be considering the whole downsizing process, I needed to be debt free. That was a choice for me. To each, his own, but I did not want to travel with debt. So when it came to storing my items, I was very lucky to be able to split the 30 boxes in plastic storage containers that I had. 15 boxes went to my sister. I stored with her, and the other 15 with my nephew. And they both live in Louisiana, which is where I'm from, but they were hours apart. Okay. So I'm having to drop those things off, but it beats paying for storage. And that's something I just absolutely could not bring myself to do. It pained me to even think about the money of throwing away in storage. But again, if you have to do that, then you do what you have to do. And so when I was able to finally have a place for all the things, what I was going to keep, what I was going to store, I could focus on my transitional living situation. And, it's a lot of trade-offs when you're staying with anyone. I don't care if they are a close friend or family, and I love my family sincerely, but you know, as a woman, you need privacy. And I traded a lot of privacy to make that move to save the money that I was paying my friend. And not to mention too, that my life was up north in the suburbs of Dallas, but my family lived past downtown Dallas in the southern sector. So that was like 37 miles. When I
Wow.
would go back for church or to visit friends or conduct business, a lot of my business transactions were in that area. And I was making multiple trips, sometimes a day throughout the week. I felt like a truck driver. I was clocking some real miles, let me tell you. And one of the trade-offs is that, you know, it started to wear on me physically. I
Yeah.
think mentally as well as emotionally. You know, I'm
Uh-huh.
sleeping on a couch, not a let out couch, just a plain old couch.
Right.
And again, another trade-off. And I wasn't sleeping well some nights. And I found that I became a little bit accident prone, you know, not sleeping well, doing all that driving. And sometimes, depending on the time of day, it may be a whole hour commute to get
Mm.
back to my cousins from up north, or to get from my cousins up north to do what I need to do. And that was really probably the most challenging part of my transition, was the in between living
Mhm.
situation.
Right.
And you know,
But
my other challenge, the emotional challenge I had, the big one, was
right.
the rehoming of Zeus.
Right. Let's transition to that, because I know that there's a lot of pet parents that are wondering, what do I do? Or, you know, what's a way to handle it? And so tell us about, I feel like I met and loved, and I think through the course of our early part of a relationship, Zeus was always at your feet,
Mhm.
in your lap, somewhere
Yes.
nearby on our Zoom calls. So Zeus is her dog. So I'll let you, you know,
Cat
go.
dog is Zeus too.
What, yeah, you think Zeus is a big dog?
That's
No.
exactly.
No, he was mighty, every bit of his name, in, you know, in personality, and he was very energetic. But he was a little, he is, because he's still around, he's a little Maltese mix with Bichon
Okay.
Frise. So
Okay.
Zeus was my baby. My boys were no longer in the home, and it was just he and I. And he was my constant companion. And you know, it was like handing over a human child with
Right.
fur, because I had heartstrings attached. And I ended up putting Zeus on next door,
Okay.
like the furniture, you know. And I always say that Zeus really did well with his transition, better than I did, because
Mhm.
it was a family that answered right away, and they were really good people. And I'm just going to say this, because I am a faith person. And for those people that are out there in your community that believe in a higher power, you know, God is concerned about us, not just the large things in our life, but the small things as well. And
Right.
I saw this as a small thing that I would pray, God, please help me to find a good home for Zeus. And I did what was best really for him, not so much as for me, because I wanted him to have the lifestyle that he was used to, a backyard, you know, having a family and that stability, and not drag him from place to place, which I could have done that. That's possible. And for the pet parents out there that want to do that, that there's nothing wrong with that. It's very doable. But I just didn't want that for me, and I didn't want that for him. So I made the decision to rehome him. The family reached out. They opened up their home to me to bring Zeus to bond a little bit before actually handing him over. They had other older pets in the home, 2 other dogs, and there were young children. So it was like an answer to prayer, because I prayed for him to have a great home, a backyard, and let there be little kids in the house that, you know, and that's exactly what he got. I was able to go to their home, get a tour to see how they were living. They had a beautiful backyard. Down the street from the house, at the end of the street, was a park where they would take the dogs to walk. And I took Zeus back home after that visit. And then we made plans for her to pick him up later. And I handed him over. And I remember him jumping in the truck with her, getting in her lap. And as she was driving off, my heart just sunk I had to just fight back the tears. And my only comfort was that he's landing in a good home. Unlike me, couch surfing in between living, having these discomforts and things I had to work through, Zeus really landed in a loving home. And to this day, we still keep in touch. I get pictures of Zeus, video of Zeus. And whenever I'm back in Dallas, I go by and I visit him and he remembers me. He meets me at the door, same energetic Zeus, and I get all the sloppy kisses and everything. So yeah, for the pet parents, it's doable. But if you find yourself in a situation like me where you have to rehome your pet, my heart goes out to you and it's possible. It's just all about vetting and placing your pet in a good, loving home where they can live out the rest of their years.
I love that story in that you did your due diligence. So you were comfortable
Right.
transitioning Zeus to his new home, his new family. And when you're slow traveling or trying to make a move on a country, you got to do due diligence. So again, I think that's part of your preparation in terms of this new phase of your life. But I'd love to ask a follow-up question. So what did you do with your larger things like your car or furniture that you had in the house? And I do want to go back to those 15 bins in your cousins and I think sister's house. Like, what did you decide to keep because they're being stored, not at a cost, but you have that. What are in those bins? I'm just curious to
Oh
find
my
out.
gosh. Well, I'll start what I did with the big things.
Okay.
Honestly, the big things were kind of the first to go.
Okay.
And I remember it being my office furniture, then my living room furniture, my bedroom furniture, and my dining room furniture, and lastly, the washer and dryer. I
Mhm.
remember it in that order because as the big things were going out the door, it really became real to me
Yeah.
because the
Yes.
house was empty and I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm really doing this. And Lynn probably remembers this. I had to break out the air mattress. I had to go
Yes.
dig in the garage, drag that air mattress out and blow that thing up. And that's how I was sleeping because I no longer had a bed. And I remember it's just a funny story of that air mattress springing a leak.
Oh,
And
no.
I did not want to go buy another air mattress because I knew I wasn't going to be needing it for very long. So I ordered a kit on Amazon. I fixed the leak. And over time, that thing sprung 2 more leaks. I would go to bed all fluffy and inflated on this thing. And then in the middle of the night, it sunk and I'm laying on the floor and I'm having to get up in the middle of the night and pump it back up. So again, transition isn't glamorous at
Right.
all, but it's just reframing your thoughts around what my why, just getting clear on and knowing the why behind the why sometimes, getting very clear on that kept me grounded and I stayed the course because I was making room for the new thing, for my dreams. And as far as the things that I kept, honestly, they were the bare basic things like sentimental
Okay.
items from my job, all kinds of plaques and things like that from retirement. It was things that my kids had over the years. They were athletes, so they had
Okay.
all these
Trophies and
trophies and
stuff.
things like that, which I tried to hand off to them, but they didn't even want them, right?
Right.
So
Right.
I'm purging my stuff, their stuff, and even their dad's stuff. When we divorced, he even left stuff behind. But I held on to just sentimental things and some books. And honestly, as I think back, if there's anything more that I could have purged, maybe my books. I love books. I like to feel the cover of a book in my hand when I'm reading and turn the pages. Now I'm on book buying restrictions, so I have to do Audible. But really, truly, those bins were a few winter clothes, books, memorabilia, and that's really it.
Mhm.
Not
So,
no
yeah,
furniture.
right.
All furniture went, not
Okay.
holding on to anything like that. Yeah.
So let's talk about both sides of the emotion of downsizing and letting go, because I have to imagine that there is probably the sadness part when it was happening, but then there's also the excitement part that I'm really living my dreams. And then the joy. I mean, how do you feel as far as being lighter? Because I imagine you've got 30 bins of stuff in your sister's place and your nephew's place, and you've been living definitely for months without those items. So probably as time goes by, or I mean, you'll probably go back to those boxes at some time and probably be like, I can probably get rid of another 20% or 30% of these items.
Totally. I think
Mhm.
you're right on point. As I was downsizing, honestly, I felt liberated as I
Mhm.
was parting with the stuff, because at the end of the day, it's just stuff. And we hold on to way more than what we really need.
Yeah.
And I realized that I had a lot. My home was bursting at the seams. I had amassed so much over the years. And as I was parting with things, it was freeing.
Mhm.
I think the only thing that was difficult for me was honestly rehoming Zeus.
Mhm.
And when it came time to actually get on the plane and leave, and I know I wasn't leaving forever, but just the fact that I'm not going to be able to get in my car and, drive within a few miles to see family or friends or something like that. But yeah, it was a liberating experience for me.
Mhm. What did your, and to our viewers, you have two sons and they are late teens in their 20s, so they're on their own, so to speak. But what did they have to say about mom packing up? And really, just to let people know, while you're going through this downsizing, you didn't know where you were going. At that
Mm,
point, when you were
no.
getting out of the house, you didn't like, oh, Jamaica is the spot or South
Mm.
America is the spot. You had no clue where you were going. You knew that you were just in this preparation for being able to live abroad. So, what did the boys have to say about all this?
You know what? It was definitely an act of faith, like you said, not knowing where I was going. When I shared with the boys, initially they felt like, well, why do you want to do this? Why are you leaving us?
Mhm. Mhm.
I was like, I'm always your mom. I'm not leaving you. You're of age where you can get on a plane and you can come visit me.
Right.
But they came around after a few months and they were like, Mom, we understand you have worked within your career, retired, you're starting your business. This is a new phase of life for you, and we want to be supportive. We just want the best for you. So they eventually came around to understanding. But here's the thing, whether they did or not, I was doing this because this is what I knew I needed to do for me. We can only live so much for our children. After a while, when they reach a certain age, you got to live for you. And as a
Mhm.
person over 50, I still have a lot of life to live and a lot of things that I want to do. So my boys, they definitely understood and they're very supportive of what I'm doing.
Okay, I've got a question. I want to go back a little bit to financial preparation. I'm the finance person, so
Oh,
I
yeah.
I
Oh,
love
it's
those
important.
questions. So you said you did not want to leave with any debt. So what were the steps that you took while you were still in the country to get out of debt? And was there something specific you were trying to pay off, or what was that part of that journey?
Wow, Joyce, that's a good question. And I'm glad you asked that because we know finances is very important when you're trying to
Right.
travel and do anything. It takes money to do these things. And I didn't want to travel with debt. And I had some credit card debt. And
Okay.
granted, my sons are young adults. Right now, they're age 27 and 20. But I finally am at a point I got them out of my pockets, but during the infancy stages of this whole transition, they were still very much in my pockets. So
Mhm.
I decided that I would take on some side hustles like substitute teaching. I did that for a while as a paraprofessional. And then I partnered with a health and wellness company and I was working that way where I didn't have to leave the house. I could do everything via my computer and I was saving my money and paying off my debt. And I started with also just cutting back on all the subscriptions. When you
Right.
think about what we're spending every month, and by the
Yeah.
end of the year in various subscriptions, and I stopped eating out because I realized I was spending a lot of money eating out, and it's just me. It is
Mhm.
just me. And I'm spending all this money. So that was another area. I just started looking for ways to trim the fat. And as
Mhm.
I was paying things off, I did the snowball method, just roll that extra money into paying something else off. And that was kind of my process for getting out of debt. And it
Mhm.
wasn't about, oh, I want to make all this money. It was about, hey, I want to be able to flex, be flexible, and have financial peace of mind as I'm traveling and not be under all the debt. And
Mhm.
I think you asked earlier about the car. I did have it was an older vehicle, a 2011 Lincoln MKX SUV, and I named her Eleanor. Yes, I'm one of those people. And Eleanor was paid for. I had moved so much in Eleanor. She was there for me through this whole transition. And unfortunately, with all the fatigue of the driving back and forth, I was saying earlier, from my cousin's house to up north, I became a little accident prone and I totaled Eleanor. So now I'm at a position where I have to make a decision of, how are you going to get around? Dallas is huge. It's very spread out. Granted, there's public transportation, but it just didn't fit for me.
Right.
And I made the decision to, someone that wants to get out of debt ended up in debt with buying a new car. And
Okay.
I thought about, hey, I'm just going to get an A to B car or A to Z car, whatever. And, but it was cheaper to get a brand new car for me in
Mhm.
my situation than it was to get a pre-owned vehicle. So
Wow.
I had a price point that I didn't want anything that was over 30 grand.
Mhm.
And I was comfortable with the payment. I got a really good deal with the dealership, with my terms and everything. So I drove that car until it was time to make the move. And I left it with my brother. I drove it to Louisiana, dropped it off with him, flew back to Dallas, and on from there to here to Guanajuato. And my brother takes really good care of it. He has a few vehicles of his own, and he just drives it to church on Sundays and run a few errands in it. So it's not sitting, for months
Mhm.
at a time.
Very good.
Yep. So we've talked about, you mentioned you're in Guanajuato now, but last year you went to Brazil for a month.
Yeah.
And I think that was kind of when you really got on the plane for the first time
Yeah.
after, somewhat of staying with the cousins, staying with the friends. We didn't talk about, there were a couple of Airbnb experiences there as
Right.
well.
Right.
But talk about, how did Brazil come about, and the timing of it and how long you were there, just from the standpoint of sort of testing the waters. Because every time we would talk, I'd be like, have you made a decision? Where are you going? Where are you going? What you doing? Moved out. You're
Yeah.
traveling light. Where are we
Yeah.
going?
Yeah. Well, there was one thing you told me, Lynn, that really stuck with me. And I don't know if you even remember, but I ruminated for 6 months over this, you know, uh, where am I going to go? Being that control freak, you just want to make sure you land in the right place. And I remember you saying, Linda, just think about it. If you get there and you don't like it, you don't have to stay. You just
Right.
pick up and go. It's not permanent. And I'm like, there's so much truth to that, but you get in your head, right? And you get
Mhm.
stuck. But Brazil was like my test run. I call my
Mhm.
test run. I got the whisper to do this in 2022, start moving and selling off things in 2023. And 2024, I think September of 2024, I made the trip to Brazil. And I wanted to stay at least a month to kind of get a feel beyond what it's like to be a tourist just visiting in that 30 days. So I spent 2 weeks in Sao Paulo and 2 weeks in Rio de Janeiro. And I loved it. I absolutely thrived in Brazil. But even though I had so much fun in Brazil, I knew it wasn't my place in my heart. I knew it wasn't the place I was supposed to stay. And the way Brazil even got on my radar is that I was part of one of those expat groups, and it was specifically for Brazil. And so it piqued my interest. And I remember there was a lady in my church from Sao Paulo. And I had lunch with her and asked her questions. And she told me everything she knew about Brazil and her family that still lived there. She actually connected me with them. So when I was like landing boots on the ground, I knew people. I had phone numbers and, and ways to contact people if I needed help with anything. So that's how Brazil came about. And while I was in Brazil, another thing that I do when I'm traveling is that I look at it as not just travel for fun, but God-centered travel, where I'm looking for the assignment. Okay, what can I do while I'm here in this space to leave it better than the way I found it? And when I was in Brazil, I was able to connect with the local pastor there, and also a guy that was from America. He was from Torrance, California, and he had been living there for 15 years, and he was fluent in Portuguese. And I partnered with him and this pastor, and we were able to go into the favelas in those communities. They're, there, and feed the children and clothe the children. And that really filled my cup. It just really added so much meaning to my travel. And even to this day, being here in Guanajuato, I look for those types of assignments. And, I pray about everything. So I was praying for the assignment. And one day, as I was having my devotion time, I just heard like that still small voice, you are the assignment. I'm looking for the assignment, and I'm trying to partner with people locally, different organizations, and nothing was working out. And I'm like, I know there's people here that need support, that needs help. And but it wasn't working out for me. And it's mostly Catholic here, other denominations, but a small percentage, but mostly Catholic. And I did end up meeting a local pastor, Christian here, he and his wife, and I attend their church. It's a small congregation, but they have really embraced me as one of their own. And it's been such a rich experience for me to be able to worship with them, serve with them. And, getting back to me as being the assignment, that really just blew my socks off, because I'm looking, and I felt like this whole time was for me to get away from all things familiar. Now I'm so centered and grounded and stronger in my faith, just my faith walk with God and just trusting him for the next step. It just really put me in a space that's hard to put into words, the amount of clarity that I have now. And when I say that I am, finding my journey, my path at my pace and my peace, I am really doing that right now.
I've got a follow-up question. Back to Brazil.
Okay.
So you said that was not the country for you, after you were there a month. What made it challenging? Because I was gonna say, if that's your first country, language would have been a pretty big hurdle, because I think we're a little more familiar with Spanish, with Mexico being so close to us, and you being in Texas, obviously. So I was like, oh my gosh, if that was the first country, I would think that would be a challenge. But I just wanted to hear what made it not the place for you. And then the second question was, since you were kind of on your Christian journey too, is your faith walk, what was your feeling seeing Christ the Redeemer statue in Rio, like for the first time too?
Oh,
So
wow. It was amazing. It was larger than life and breathtaking. Brazil is so beautiful. I mean, there's things to appreciate about Brazil as there is about Mexico. It has its own vibe. The language barrier for sure, Portuguese. One reason is that Spanish is more widely spoken. And I felt like if I'm going to invest in learning a language, let that be the language. And so Brazil was beautiful. I had an amazing time, but it didn't feel connected really. Like it was the place to call home. Definitely enjoyed it for all it was worth while I was there. Met some beautiful people that I still keep in touch with, that I consider as friends, and even partnered with a church there. My church, home church in Dallas, Texas, has a partnership with a church in Rio de Janeiro. So I was able to visit that church and get a tour and meet some of the people there. But Brazil just didn't feel like it was the place I was supposed to stay. That's the best way I can explain it.
okay.
So you are in Guanajuato, Mexico. How did that come about? as far as like, because you left Brazil, you were there for a month, and that was somewhere at the, September, October of 2024. And so you went back to Dallas, and I think, stayed at a couple of places for that period of time. And
Yeah.
then was like, okay, this next trip, because you had your feet wet, was going to be, you kind of knew you were going to go someplace for at least 6 months. That was kind of the thought, wasn't it, when coming back from
Exactly.
Brazil? So
Mhm.
how did Guanajuato come about? And I think this is probably about, you're just down to another few weeks there. So what happens next? But talk about Guanajuato first and how that came about.
Okay. Well, I was talking to someone in the travel business and they mentioned Guanajuato, and I was like, oh, okay, never heard of that. And then one day I was doing some research on places online and I came across this YouTube video and it was about Guanajuato. And I was like, there's that name again. Let me research it and see what it's about. And I say that I'm a La Playa girl. I'm all about the beach. In Guanajuato, there is no beach. It's mountains, okay? Just looking at the buildings behind me, they look like colorful Legos that someone's pressed in the mountains. But it just piqued my interest as I was researching. And one of the things that I liked was that it had, even though it's considered a city, it had this small town feel to it. And I felt like I could integrate very well here. It's really big on the arts, the performing arts. And I love that. The creatives, lots of creatives here. And I just feel like I thrive in that type of environment. And as I researched it and the things I read about it, from the culture and just the vibe of the city, I'm like, I think I can do that. I mean, when I wrote out my why, I did a visualization exercise where I visualized the place I wanted to be, what it looked like, down to the cobblestone streets, the colonial architecture. In Guanajuato, I checked off a lot of those boxes. So I was like, hey, there's no beach, but if I get too sick for the beach, I'll just travel and go to the beach.
Right.
And so when I landed here, I don't know how to explain it other than, even though this is an unfamiliar place for me, it's new for me, I felt at home here. I was able to get my routine, meet locals and expats alike. And I'm very careful how I use the word friend, but I've made some really great acquaintances here that have the potential to grow into a friendship.
Right.
And I mean, owners of businesses, especially women entrepreneurs, and I support them every chance I get for my services. And I've met some beautiful women here, inside and out, very smart and very entrepreneur minded. And so Guanajuato just fits for me. Is it a place I want to call home? No, but is it a place I will come back to? Absolutely. And right now, I just want to travel more and get my feet wet, experience different countries and different cultures. And then as I have things to compare, I can settle down and find a place to call home and apply for residency. But for right now, however long my passport would allow me to stay, I'm going to stay for that time. I'm going to learn as much about the culture that I can, get a rhythm, integrate. I never care so much about assimilation, because assimilation, meaning to me, it feels like I got to give up something to assimilate into something totally new. It's like taking all that comes with me and being able to integrate within a community and feel connected, where yes, I may be a solo traveler, but I'm not alone. I'm not alone. I've really created a good routine and a good life for myself here.
I got a question. I think Lynn touched upon it. So you are a cancer survivor.
Yes.
So with that, how do you manage healthcare? Like, I gotta believe you would have still routine check-ins to see how your levels are doing, et cetera. We've done an interview with another cancer survivor, and she said that was a huge category that went into her picking a specific country. So
Yeah.
how do you
And she was there, but Erica was there to land.
Yes, to land.
Right.
Yeah.
You're doing slow
Yeah.
travel. So
Yes.
how does healthcare play into these decision making and what coming to Mexico and, you know, even in the future?
Okay. I made sure with my provider, Blue Cross Blue Shield, I had a conversation with a representative to know what my options are here. And I looked at places if I needed to go for care to have an idea where I would go. But honestly, my care is still being managed in the US.
Okay.
Like when I go back at the end of this month, I'm going into mammogram, colonoscopy, all those fun things, and getting the works, you know, my dental checkup, everything. Could I get those things done here? Yes. But because I knew I wasn't coming on a permanent basis, that I would be going home, I reserved to wait until I get back to the States to get that type of care. But when the time comes and I find a place to call home, of course, that's going to be a huge one for me as well. I saw that interview with Erica and it was fantastic. And I can totally relate to landing in a place where there is really good health care. That's very important, whether you have a bout or history with cancer or not, as we age and get older, you know.
Right. Right.
Just how the body just starts shifting and things changing. So yes, that was how I handled the whole healthcare situation.
Right. So that's probably your advice to other slow travelers. And I think we've heard that before, is that if you're going to be really kind of keeping a home base, then when you come home, you take care of all the healthcare, all the maintenance, everything that you need so that you don't have to worry about that abroad. And then, you know, if something comes up and, you know, you get a cold or sinus infection or something
been
like
there.
that,
Oh, been
you
there.
handle it locally.
Yeah. And let me tell you how I handle that locally is that the expat groups are gold, you know, a really good supportive community. And soon as you put anything in there, people respond. You know, you take what's good and what's not, you know, you just spit it out, right?
Right.
But I've met people here that have shared things with me. They're like, Linda, this is where you go to the doctor if you need to. And I ended up with a really bad like sinus infection. I was having the migraines and a lady recommended her doctor. I went in with my limited Spanish and I have been getting tutoring since I've been here, but with my limited Spanish, his limited English, it worked beautifully to share my symptoms and whatever gaps, I just pull out the Google Translator. And that visit only cost me like 65 pesos. And when you look at what's 65 Mexican pesos to US dollars, it was a $3.50 visit. I was in, I was out. He prescribed me 3 medications. It sounds like a lot, but when I got those medications and start taking them within a day, I felt like 100% better. I knew I wasn't, but I felt that way. And yeah, so it's helped. It really helps to have a community that gives you the support that you need, whether that's an expat community online or whether that's local people that you have met that really just has your best interests in mind and really want to be helpful. And I've been really blessed to have some good people in my life here.
Right. So what's next? What's
Next,
next? You're leaving in a couple of weeks. And are you going to shed some tears when you go? Maybe one tear from Mexico?
It's going to be bittersweet. I'm going to be honest. I have people now telling me, I had breakfast this morning at my favorite cafe and the owner was like, she's from England, you know, she's married to a local here. And she's like, I'm going to miss seeing you every day. It's going to be hard for me. I think I'm going to cry. And, you know, I was like, it's definitely going to be bittersweet for me as well. The people, when I come through the door that I see in the usual place and I know their name, you know, it's almost like the bar Cheers, going to a place where everybody knows you and you know them. But when I leave here at the end of the month, I'm going to go back to Dallas, and spend about a month or so there getting all the doctor's appointments in. And then I'm going to go to Louisiana, probably like in November, spend some time with my family. I have older siblings. I'm the baby. So everyone's getting older, and I just want to make sure they're okay. And maybe get Thanksgiving in before I push off in December to Antigua, but not Antigua, Guatemala, but Antigua, Caribbean. And I want to spend some time there. It's like a birthday gift to myself because my birthday's in December.
La playa.
Yes,
A la
exactly.
playa.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Well, we're going to bring this to the close, but as we sort of close, how has, what advice do you have for anybody that may be on the fence or is kind of like, yeah, I'd love to sell all my stuff and travel the world, but it just feels like it's so far away?
Or it's daunting.
Or yeah, it's just scary and that type of thing. What advice would you give to, someone just like you 3 years ago that might be on this journey or whatever, and just is looking around their house at all the stuff and thinking about their kids? And, what advice do you say for anybody that's on, on this path?
I say take the risk or lose the chance. And that's just a mantra that I would tell myself when I get in my head too much and start looping and it paralyzes me. But honestly, fear is normal, but it's when we allow it to paralyze us where we don't act. And I say, take the fear, turn it into faith, and think about it this way. You don't have to take the big leap and make it so overwhelming. Start small. Start small. Maybe just start room by room like I did. If you have the idea you want to do this, and start with that junk drawer in the kitchen, that's small enough, or the closet, in the hallway, in the entryway, whatever. But the key is to start, to take action and think about what you're doing. What's your why? And if you want to take it a step further, knowing the why behind the why, where you're crystal clear, what you're doing is making room, creating that space for your dreams, for those things that you're passionate about. And so I say, start small. You can even do a test run like I did. Go somewhere for a couple of weeks or a month and see if you have the capacity for this type of living. And if you do, great. And you got that resilience and you want to explore more, then do more. You don't immediately have to sell your home and get rid of all your things. You can take it slow and just take a trip for a period of time. Come back to your home and assess if this is something you really want to do.
Wonderful, wonderful. And as Linda has said, she is a transformation coach. And so just before we go, how can people reach you? Because I know you do work with people on an individual basis. You work with organizations on how to help them manage transformation and change. But let us know a few of the socials, because some of our audience may want to follow you on other platforms just to keep up with what you're doing in your work. And you do include some of your travels in your posts and your community.
So true. Thank you for that, Lynn. Yes, Gen Xers are my sweet spot. Let me tell you, being someone that is a Gen Xer and over 50, you can reach me through garnercoaching.com, Garner, Garner. Also, Instagram, it's the account is in my name, Linda.P, like in Papa, Griffin, Griffin, and also LinkedIn and Facebook at Garner Coaching. I would love to just answer any questions that you may have and hear your stories. I'm here for it, to walk alongside of you and just to know that reinvention is possible at any age and it's never too late.
Wonderful. So we will drop her contact in the comments. And speaking of comments, please continue the conversation there. Jice and I monitor, we read each comment. Linda will probably be jumping into the comments as well. So if you have something, you may direct it there. I'm sure she'll pop into the comments and can answer questions. But Linda, we just want to say thank you for taking this time and sharing your story with us and inspiring other people to start and to act and to do. And it's not as scary if you put yourself out there. And with that, Gen X crew, we thank you for watching. As always, like, share, and definitely subscribe. And with that, anything else, Jice?
Muchas gracias y tiene buen fin de semana y Día de Independencia.
Sí, gracias.
So for
Thank
anybody that needs to know,
you.
what did you just say?
I just said have a great, oh, thank you. And then have a great weekend and have a great Independence Day for those of you in Mexico.
Right,
Independence
that's
Day
the
of
day that we are
Mexico.
recording it. So we are
Yes.
recording this on September 12th,
Yes.
and it will be, you'll probably be watching this within the next week or so. So Gen X crew, thanks so much. Linda, thank you. And we'll see you on the next Gen X Quench
Thank
video.
you, Lynn and
Take care,
Jice.
everyone.
Bye-bye.